I can't see.
Oh, that's because because I had tape over my webcam. So I'm always afraid people are going to spy on me. So I put tape over my webcam. Okay, so are you going to tell me what this is all about?
No. Mic check.
Novi, please, this is not a podcast.
I want to get train from Moscow to
Novi, please,
Vladivostok.
this is
It took
not
me
a
7
podcast.
days.
Wait, it's not.
Okay. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine.
We'll start from the beginning. So we've known each other for 6 years now, almost. So my first impression of you. Okay, usually, before that, I think I didn't have many internet friends. So for me, that was a first. And 6 years down, where if I look back, I think whenever you meet someone online on the internet, you
Oh,
judge
wait,
them.
wait. Sorry, one sec. Hello.
How did you discover Hogwarts is here, and how did you end up there?
I think I had read about it online. That it was like that it had been launched. It had been going on for a little while. And I started off, I think, in the chat rooms. I'm not sure how it ended up happening, but I ended up becoming a PA for Defense Against the Dark Arts. I can't remember who it was, but she was a crazy lady.
Okay.
And like Professor May, maybe? I don't know. She left not long after.
The Defense Against the Dark Arts professor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
And she had told me to, like, mark stuff, and I'm like, okay. So marking involves feedback, so I just given a little feedback about, like, oh, just make sure you edit your work, like, nothing mean. And then she's just like, I didn't ask you to do that. And I'm like, actually, you did. You told me to do that. And then she removed me as a PA, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty serious for an online Hogwarts experience. And then I think that's when I was, like, in the chat room a lot, because growing up I'd spent a lot of time in internet chat rooms, especially Harry Potter ones. It's where I met a lot of online friends through Harry Potter stuff back when AOL was a thing.
So HIH wasn't your first Harry Potter related? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I mean, like, first, like, immersive experience, but, like,
Right.
well, actually, maybe that's not even true either, but, like, when I had AOL, like, one of the very first things I did when I got AOL was there were chat rooms, and they had Harry Potter chat rooms, like, different houses, so you could be in the Gryffindor chat room or the Ravenclaw, like, whatever, so I hung out in the Gryffindor chat room,
Okay.
and that's where I met people that I ended up talking to outside the chat room for several years, and that continued on for a long time. But I ended up leaving the Harry Potter chat room to just hang out with those people, and then I didn't do an online Harry Potter thing really until a couple years after Pottermore.com had launched, and even then I really wasn't that involved. It was really Hogwarts is Here that, like, was the full, like, taking classes and, like, studying and pretending like I was there kind of thing. So that was.
But you were involved with the site for the next couple of, or more than a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, eventually I became the magical literature professor. That was fun. And for the first little while, it was great. Like, I did Disney Lit Weeks, which was really fun. Loved talking to students about that. Just loved talking to students about literature in general. And then eventually it just became kind of way too serious. So I kind of just don't want to do this anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's step out of the internet, and we'll talk about can you just summarize what skills you have acquired through formal training what inspired you to get into what you did, and what actually you ended up doing?
Right. Okay. So my parents read to me a lot when I was a kid. Like I always wanted to be read to. I ended up like writing stories at a really young age. Yeah, I love reading more than anything. I also love really going to school. My parents, in fact, would like in order to keep me in line, like if I ever acted out, which wasn't that often, but sometimes, kids do. My parents would be like, if you don't behave, you're not allowed to go to school. And I'd be like, oh no, don't do that. And then I would behave because I love school that much.
So you're more like a nerd? Is that's what people
Yeah,
get
I was
called?
like, I don't think I became like super nerd until like sometime after grade 6. The first few years of elementary school, I really liked school because I got to see all the other kids. Like it was more the social part than anything else because I'm only child. Like I had friends on the street, but I was bored at home and I wanted to be around people and to talk to people. I was really social then. So yeah, in the beginning it was really more about like people than school learning. But I think after grade 6, so around when I was 11 or 12, um, which was again around the time when I discovered Harry Potter and started going online. Things changed a little bit. Like I found people to be kind of superficial and not who they really were. Whereas in like on the internet, everyone involved with Harry Potter just seemed like they were going through the same things I was at school.
Yeah.
My love of literature was always there. Like my grade 6 teacher would read Harry Potter to us, the first book. And I like in the beginning I was like, what is this childish nonsense? Like, what is this kid in a cupboard and
I think I had
like
the similar experience.
so I would hide Wuthering Heights in my desk. Like I would read, like, in my opinion, real literature while my grade 6 teacher would read Harry Potter. And then I don't know what happened. Like I began paying more attention to what she was reading. Like when like it was more like Harry gets his letter and he's like, oh, I'm a wizard. I'm like, oh, this kind of sounds interesting. And then it just sort of like went from there. But then yeah, like so from grade 6 to 8, I was like really into school as opposed to kids.
But you
Loved
still
English.
continued reading a lot of books and
Yes, I was always reading. I was always reading like adult novels. Like I was already into like 19th century literature by then, like 10, 11, 12. I was reading Jane Austen. I did read a lot of romance novels as well, which were probably something I should have stayed away from, but it's fine. But yeah, I loved reading. I loved writing. In grade 6, we got to do a lot of writing. Like we would write short stories, and we got marked on that. And then in high school, again, I loved English. I loved everything that involved like writing. So that was really anything from like history to like sociology, like anything that like involved essays. I enjoyed doing that. But yeah, English was my favorite course. I was pretty good at it. In grade 10, I ended up taking grade 10 and 11 English. And then in grade 11, I ended up taking grade 12 English and also other grade 12 courses. And one of my teachers for this sociology course, she's just like, you can't take this course because it's a grade 12 course and it requires grade 12 English. I'm like, well, I'm taking it right now. And she's just like, yes, but you're in grade 11. So like you haven't really, and I'm like, watch me. I got the highest mark in the class. In fact, I did so well that I won the award for both my cohort and the following cohort. So like she didn't give that award for that class that year to anyone because she was waiting to give it to me the following year. So I beat out everyone a year ahead of me and everyone who took the class a year after me. So yeah, like I was always really into like learning. And I guess that's where my teaching interests also came from too, because I don't think I ever really wanted to leave school. I thought, okay, I'm going to find a career that has teaching, learning, reading, and writing all together. And I was like, oh, well, that's education. So I took creative writing in grade 12. I don't write as much as I used to, but I did write a lot. I don't read as much as I used to because most of the reading I do is for my dissertation. So when my PhD is over, hopefully I can get back to doing that again. But from high school, I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And again, English and sociology were my thing. I also took history and philosophy. I got involved a lot. I worked for the Queen's Journal, so the newspaper. So I was doing different kinds of writing. And then, yeah, after Queen's, I got accepted to Western University for my master's in English literature. Also, lots of reading and writing. And I was TAing, so I was teaching by that point when I was like 21. And then I got accepted to the PhD program at Western, what feels like a long time ago now. And hopefully I'll be wrapping up my PhD by the end of this fiscal year, academic year, I don't know, couple months. And yeah, I just really the thing I loved most was everything involved in school, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. I still love reading, and maybe one day I'll get over my, fear of showing my work to other people. Maybe I'll publish something. Who knows?
Yeah, you should. And yeah, you actually ended up doing what you wanted. So, do you ever look back and think, if I weren't able to do this, what would I have done instead? Is there something like an alternative career you have in mind?
Yeah, I'd probably either go into law. I really like arguing. I really like justice. That's something I'm really passionate about. The only other thing I could think of is like advocacy, political work. Even when I was really young, I was interested in like the education system. Like I remember even watching like the provincial candidate debates. Like you would know this, but in Ontario it was like Mike Harris at the time. And I was interested in like what the government was doing or thought about education. So I think my interest has always been like my interest in politics, policy, advocacy work has always been there. I just didn't really fully understand what that would have meant until I did SOGS, the Society of Graduate Students, all my student union work. That's been a journey. Doing student services and, overseeing budgets and like working with students. It definitely combined all of my passions because it's still a lot of reading and writing. It's just a different kind. Right. But also with still a lot of education and research, which again, more aligns with my PhD and what I've been doing. So I hope potentially, because I'm now moving away from education, I don't want to be a teacher anymore because the education system, well, the current government.
Wait. You don't?
Yes.
I missed that.
No, I don't. I don't want to be, like, I love teaching. I will miss teaching students. And maybe whatever career I go into will still involve, like, maybe running workshops and still engaging with students in that way, but not formally teaching because it's just, you're overworked and underpaid, and the current government, like, hates educators, and I just don't think I can stick it out anymore. It's too hard.
If not teaching, then what are you looking at?
So initially, after I decided I didn't want to be an academic anymore, I wanted to go into student services work. So I would still work in the academy, like at a university.
It's more about more like administration and
exactly,
stuff.
yeah. So like for example, there's someone named Jenny Massey. She's the associate vice provost of student experience. So essentially, she oversees all of student life at Western, the university that I go to, like, and that's what I wanted to do since I'd been involved with SOGS for so many years. And like, I want to like create and run and enhance programming for students to help enhance their student experience, because for so many years universities are just like, okay, like, classroom, like learning, exams, but there's so much more to that. Like, I mean, if you want to really produce a well-rounded student, like who's prepared for the workforce, there's just so much other aspects of school life that need to be enhanced, and that's what I wanted to do. unfortunately, like a couple things happened this year specifically as VP, like while I was VP finance. I saw just like a kind of level of incompetence on the university side of things that like made me realize if I'm going to be dealing with that much incompetence, like I'd rather be dealing with it at a higher level, like at a level where my impact is much higher. Like I still care about university students, but like if at Western the buck stops with administration, so I'm like it's not enough. Like I want more, and so what I'm thinking about now is hilariously enough not the Ministry of Education, but I'm actually interested in going to work for the Ministry of Health because I find that, I mean, our healthcare system, which is a hell of a lot better than the United States, it's nowhere near as awesome as European healthcare systems. And I think Canada needs to stop like bragging about how awesome its healthcare system is when our healthcare system is still the same healthcare system that existed in the 1960s when it first started. So I want to help be part of that change. And so that could be either going to work for the Ministry of Health as as a staff, or, and this is where I'm really interested in potentially pursuing, is become a politician, like actually run for public office and have more direct impact on changing the healthcare system to really benefit Canadians so that we can actually, like, say to the world, yeah, we do have a great healthcare system, and stop pretending like.
Yeah, but I think I think Canada already has a very good reputation of.
Yes.
Do you have the transition planned already in your head, like how you're going to go about it, or you just want to go finish this year and then look ahead?
Yeah, so I definitely need to finish my PhD no matter what. But the good thing about the Canadian government is that, unlike everyone else, the Canadian government actually appreciates PhDs. Like they want someone who is used to slogging through a lot of research and combining it together to offer a clear piece of information. They want someone who has stuck to a program for so long in the face of barriers, because the government is ultimately this system that is very hard to work through. They want they're looking for people who are mature and interested in research, and I think working for the government makes the most sense to transition from doing my PhD. Some questions might arise about well, you have a PhD in English literature, are you really qualified to transition into healthcare? But the thing about getting a PhD is that most PhDs develop skills that many business companies don't really understand. There's a company called MyTax, which is actually making efforts to understand what is called knowledge translation. And what that is understanding that the knowledge that one gains in a PhD program is not just discipline specific, it's also the skills that you hone over time. And those could be anything from time management to socialization, networking skills, research skills, slogging through a lot of information and being able to translate it to the masses who are not experts in the field. And that's ultimately what businesses and the government are looking for in an employee, right? Like someone who is able to synthesize that research and make it accessible to the outside world in order to advocate for change. So I think in terms of a broad plan, it will be finishing the PhD and then looking for government specific jobs. There are a number of them out there. It's just a matter of getting my foot in the door in the right place. To be honest, given how much mental energy my PhD is taking up most of the time, it's been hard to even really look. But yeah, no, the plan is to transition into a government job. It might not necessarily be the healthcare system right away, but I know I want to work for the government and get my foot in the door that way. And it might involve starting from the quote unquote bottom, which is fine. I mean, when you're entering in the workforce, that's where you have to start. And I'm willing to do that.
Okay. So what you're saying is what I picked up is by doing a PhD, you basically don't just get skills in the field of where you're specializing in, but also in other aspects which the industry does not does not recognize it yet, right?
Yeah.
So
yes, there are a number of industries that I don't think are quite yet there in understanding how useful PhDs can be. That's why so many PhDs end up leaving the field. Well, they end up leaving the field of academia because there are just not enough academic jobs anymore. They're just not there. But then also, I think a number of PhDs end up going to work for the government, or they end up working at the college level because the colleges always need teachers. Unfortunately, the system is not set up to handle the influx of academics who are leaving academia to just teach as opposed to do research. And then, of course, nonprofits are probably looking for people who with like at least a master's degree, because they do want someone who can write policy, who can do research, who can communicate. Those are important skills. But yeah, I think the government is probably like the most, I guess, like open-minded, aware industry that probably appreciates PhDs the most. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, if in future, or maybe even now, if someone you come to know that looks up to you, because the tag of being a role model comes with so much pressure, you have to live up to it. And so what is your opinion on it? Are you okay with being somebody else's role model?
So I'm definitely no one's role model for like academia in the strictest sense of the word. I'm like a year X PhD student. I got distracted with teaching and my SOGS work, so I'm sure no one would want to take that path to becoming an academic.
Because
but in
you never know, right? Because when you are at a position, and you never know who actually is observing you and being inspired and stuff like that. Maybe someday that this person comes up to you and says that you inspired them. So
yeah, I definitely had undergraduate students come up to me and ask me about grad school, and just based on our conversations, I encouraged them to go to grad school, and many of them did. So that was nice, that they said that because of my passion for the English, that made them want to pursue it. So at that level, definitely. But in terms of like inspiring people for other reasons, definitely my SOGS work encouraged a lot of people to get involved. Most people know me through SOGS. And I'm positive a lot of people got involved because of me. In fact, people have come up to me to tell me that they got involved because of me. And that's always nice to hear, because we definitely could use some more student advocates. Not just at Western, but in general, like people who want to pursue student services, or, go out in the world and make it a better place. Yeah. So, in that sense, I think I've been a role model, which is nice.
So if I want to turn the question around to you, is there somebody you look up to as a role model, or do you not believe in such things?
No, I definitely believe in role models. I guess I haven't really thought about that in a while.
Okay, maybe growing up, was there someone who it's okay. It could be anybody in your family, your relatives, or maybe some celebrity. It could be anyone.
Yeah, actually, okay. Well, growing up, and also I guess still today, Haley Sobel, she's the older sister of my childhood friend. She lives on my street back home where my parents live. Haley was 4 years older. She was always very good in school. She babysat me sometimes. She loved reading too. I mean, she and I have like really similar taste. She also pursued academia. She just got her PhD, I think, a little year ago in psychology, like education. And now she has a full-time job working with kids. So I always found Haley to be a role model because she was very studious, very dedicated, avid reader, very practical, rational. And not that this is as important, but I guess it is also important. She's a female, you know, like successful, dedicated, studious female, and I looked up to her as a child, and still did, and still do in many ways. Like, she reads so much, and I wish I read as much as she still does today, and still finds time to read as much. So yeah, I would say Haley would be as close to a role model as I ever had. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you before. I'll go ahead with it because we are still talking about role models. If there is one message that you want to give young girls or boys or anybody, it doesn't matter, somebody who's still in high school and wants to go maybe into academia or even work for the government later on, what would it be?
So in terms of advice, like, things were very different. Things are very different now than they were like in the 90s, or like even the early 2000s, when I eventually, you know, went to university. And I hate that this will be the advice I'm about to say, but to be honest, it's so important. Like, even though you're really young, and you know, you shouldn't have to figure out what you want to do or what you want to be at such a young age, because I don't think that's really fair to people who are just still figuring things out. Yeah. I think at the very least, like, young people should still try to the best of their ability, look around and see what careers are out there, and not just, like, you know, the traditional careers, like, I want to be a fireman or I want to be an astronaut, like, you know, like those jobs obviously still exist, but I mean, there are so many different, like, types of jobs out there that, like, don't appear on flashcards when you're a child, right? Yeah, like, and I think young people should have the opportunity to see what that looks like. And the other thing to think about is, like, the job industry, the jobs themselves, like, they change so fast now with technology. And I think students, even though they should enjoy their childhood, definitely, I think they should always have an eye on the changing fields of jobs, and keep an open mind to various career paths, because things are so competitive now. I mean, like, you know, you can get a 95 average and be very involved and be an excellent, you know, writer. And you could be a big fish in a small pond, but then, you know, you might go away to university and there are a bunch of other big fish, and, you know, you have to be able to adjust to that. So I really think having a kind of edge in the beginning, not necessarily, like, you know, become Mozart at the age of 3. You know, I don't mean that. I just mean, like, enjoy childhood, but also have an eye on the future. I think that's very important. And I think if I had a little bit more sense of what it really meant, that might, like, to be a professor, which is what I wanted. Yeah. If I had like a little more understanding of what that actually was in high school, I think I would have made more of an effort to explore different things in university rather than just, like, English, because it's great to have a passion, but, like, sometimes your passion can't always be your career. And so that's why you should explore, again, hate to say this, like, more tangible things that can easily translate into a career. And I'm not saying that English can't translate into a career, because, like, it can, but you have to do the research and you have to figure out what that looks like. I think keeping an open mind is important and not get hung up on just one thing. Like, again, like, definitely take English courses. Like the whole curriculum is set up to allow students to do that whenever they want, really. Like, I mean, you have to take English all the way through high school. You can't get out of it. So you're stuck doing that anyway. But then also there's, like, different ways to explore an interest in English that doesn't just involve, like, only focusing on that in university. I think taking advantage of, and again, this is where student services comes in, taking advantage of all the professional development opportunities. Like, for example, there is something called career services. It's usually there in every university, it might be called something different. But I mean, like, if you are really serious about pursuing something to do with English, then as soon as you can, you should be talking to someone who has at least some experience in jobs, about what it would mean to, pursue English and then what that looks like after your degree. Because I didn't really think about that. I was like, yeah, I'll be a professor. But like, I didn't realize that, being a professor is not the same thing as being a teacher. In the 90s, like if you were graduating and went to teachers college, most of them were getting jobs then. But then now, not only are there no academic jobs for professors, or at least unless you're a superstar, like unless you have several books already published, several articles, like you're just like up there. Now there's also really no jobs for teachers. And in fact, many of them end up spending years on the supply teachers list, waiting to get into the lottery to get them into the system where they eventually get full-time jobs. And now teachers college isn't 10 months anymore, it's 2 years.
You're saying the it's difficult to be a teacher, but you also said that the teaching system is not up to the mark anymore. And
nope.
So why is that? I mean,
it's a number of things. And again, if you're not familiar with what's going on with Ontario politics, so the province that I live in Canada, when a different government comes in that has different priorities and ways to explore how to make education better for people, this ultimately impacts like where the education system is and where it's going. So when you have a government that like believes that more money should be invested into the classrooms, we should have less students in each class so the teacher can have more time with each student, more money so that teachers don't have to pay out of pocket for teaching supplies, like more money that's devoted to developing the curriculum so that it actually reflects the 21st century as opposed to using documents that are from the 1990s. And then so all of that is going, forward. Then you have a government that comes in and is just like, well, we don't want to pay our teachers a living wage, or like, we think that we're going to save money by putting more students in one class. So instead of having 31 students, you have 41 students in one classroom, which is insane. Or like, some teachers like have to pay out of pocket for their resources. So a teacher has to choose, like, do I like, try to give more back to my students so they can get more out of the system, or like, do I sacrifice my income and therefore my overall like quality of life, right, just to do my job? And then of course, like the higher level of policy, like for example, the previous government, the Liberal government, had done a lot of research, consulted with a lot of parents, and wanted to bring the sex ed curriculum up to the 21st century, and had this whole plan, et cetera, and put it forward. Then the then the Conservative government won and came in, and then there was this whole big thing about like, oh, we're going to throw it out and we're going to use the curriculum from the 1990s. And I'm just like, you mean when gender identity wasn't even a thing? And it was just like such a waste of time, like talking about something that should have never been a big deal. And then they only pushed back because it was a Liberal policy.
So what you're saying is, so all that problems that you pointed out is what you're looking to fix. Exactly. I mean, not necessarily in the education system, because I feel like that's kind of a train wreck that is just going a million miles an hour, and I don't know if I can stop it. But I'd like to get involved in the government to try to make a difference to the best of my ability. Okay, and before I interrupted you about when you were talking about the message that you wanted to give to young kids, you were saying about talking to career services. And
well, I mean, ultimately, like, it's great to have a dream and everyone should pursue their dream, but everyone also needs to be have a little dose of realism in there too. There's so many more opportunities for people to pursue their dreams, and people should take advantage of them, but they should also put in the work. Right? Like, you can't just wait for your dream to come to you. Like, if you really want something, you need to put in the work and go out and figure out how to make it happen. And ultimately, for certain things, like, if you know what career you want, then you should be putting in the time to figuring out what steps do I need to take in order to get the career that I want? Like that's instead of just focusing on focusing on the bare minimum, like what I did. Like I took English courses and I'm just like, I'm gonna take English courses, I'm gonna get into grad school and eventually it'll all work out. Like that's not how being a professor works out. Like it doesn't work out that way.
Normally, yeah, I would. This is where I would have ended, but then I thought of one more question. How much does the expectations of this of society and the fear of being judged matter to you? Because I know I have that, as in I'm always thinking, if I do this, what would how would my parents feel, or what would my friends think, or even some stranger on the street, or if I do something, and that's always going through my mind. So let's see, you talked about switching your specializations, or does that go through your mind, as in what will my colleagues or my friends or my mentor or my parents, does that go through your head, or you just think this is my life, my decisions, and it does not matter?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like switching careers is a better decision in the end. Like it'll end up giving me a better job. I'll have better finances, more security. I'll feel hopefully less like a failure, because in academia, holy crap, do they make you feel like a failure? So I'm not going to miss any of that. So I'm not really worried about what people are going to say. It's more, I guess it really is more internal. Like I'm walking away from academia because I feel like I failed. So it's not really about what other people think. It's more like I legitimately feel like I failed. But like, instead of being sad about it, I'm like, well, I also don't want to go down with the ship, because that's ultimately where post-secondary academia is going at this rate, because it's becoming corporatized. And I don't want to be part of that shit. So, yeah. So that not so much. I think the
generally,
closest,
maybe not in that particular thing, maybe otherwise.
Yeah, so the closest thing that I'd be worried, that I guess think about in terms of being judged, is my physical appearance. As a woman, sex is everywhere. You have Hollywood actresses, you have models, you have porn stars, and just like, well, I don't look like any of those people. I'm being told, like, if I don't look like that, then no man will want me, or my partners will just want them and fantasize about them, and like, where does that leave me? Which is depressing and sad. But I mean, I don't know how other people walk through the world not feeling like they want to cry themselves to sleep every day thinking about it, because it's just everywhere and you can't escape it. And like, you might have some men who be like, oh, I'm not like that, but like, a lot of guys are like that. So like, what are you going to do? And it's just a lot of pressure to compete and to always be desirable and be wanted. And, I'm working with what I've got, and what I've got apparently isn't good enough. So at the end of the day, I'm just always sort of sad about it. But, you gotta live, right? You gotta go through the world, and eventually you're gonna get old. So you're not going to be able to compete on that level anyway. So not like I'm competing now, but so that is the one thing I think about in terms of being judged.
So if I were to change turn the question around again this time, do you think you judge people too soon, or?
I mean, to be honest, after all this time, even though like a lot of people in my life a lot of people I've known have ended up being not so great. That's why I don't really have a lot of friends, because I mean, some people would say, well, maybe you're the problem. I'm like, no, just met a lot of unfortunate people in my life that I don't want to talk to anymore. I still feel like even after all of that, my first impressions are generally positive. I want to think the good in everyone. Like I like to joke about how everyone annoys me, and how I prefer to be alone or like away from people, because being with people drains me. And like, while some of that is true, having to be on all the time, like when you're with people, I mean, that came years later. I never used to be like that. But, like, I still feel like when I meet people, I do really want to believe the best in them, and that I don't immediately think that they're psychos or that they're mean or you know, like, that they're going to hurt me. I think, like, oh, you know, like, that, like, they seem cool. And that's pretty much as far as it goes until I have the chance to get to know them more. Ultimately, to be honest, like, I really think I'm so desperate to find friends, to find kindred spirits, that I'm really willing to believe that everyone is really good when I meet them, and then when they turn out not to be, like, I guess over the years I just kind of become used to it, and I'm like, it sucks, but time to move on. Like, so.
But there's always the internet.
Yes, there's always the
people.
internet.
Yeah, there's 7 billion people in the world. You keep every day you can meet a new person. But... right?
Yes, that's very, very true.
Yeah. So okay, I think I'm done with everything that went on longer than I had imagined. But yeah, it was fun.
Yes, it was fun, right? I mean, it's super serious for you, so I love it. It's very different than what you normally do.
I don't know how to end it.
I don't know. We should do this more often.
Okay, it was nice talking.
It was nice talking
This is
to
awkward.
you.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you. Thank you for taking the time out on a weekend. Okay, I guess that's it.
Yeah, all right. Well, hopefully you get a good night's sleep since it's late there.
Yes,
And I will be going out in less than an hour to talk to people I don't want to talk to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See
Good.
you then. Bye.
That is one big pile of shit.
Just wait a moment.
पहले वीडियो लाइक करें फिर सब्सक्राइब करें टिंग टिंग टिंग